Hello, welcome to this episode of Design Aloud. Design Aloud is a podcast hosted by UX Studio, a design agency based in Budapest. Through this podcast, our goal is to spotlight UX and other disciplines that emphasize people and their needs in the realm of design. Hi everyone, this is Aisha. I'm a UX researcher from the studio and today's host. In this episode, we have Andras joining us again from the studio. He's here to share his experiences working as a researcher on one of our most rewarding and long-lasting collaborations. So welcome Andras, thank you for joining us today.
Hey Aisha, thank you for having me.
Of course. Before we jump into the details of the project, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Andras and I'm a researcher at the studio for 3 years now. I worked on a lot of different projects. I also have a background in psychology and I also finished like a soft skill trainer course.
Okay.
And that's about it.
Okay, that's already great. Thank you. And now that we know a little bit more about you, let me get started by asking you who our collaborator or client was on this project and what problem they approached us with.
Yeah, sure. So our client is called Nanoleq and they are a Swiss-based startup and they are specializing on B2B smart wearable technology. That sounds very technical. It's basically like a garment that you can wear and it has electrodes in the inside and it can measure like very complex, basically vitals and in real time. So that means like immediately you can see the changes and it can measure things like heart rate, breathing rate, HRV, temperature, things like that. And they had the idea to launch a new product, which is a B2C product for breathwork and well-being. And basically, they asked us to start from the very beginning and to redesign their app from zero. What they had is a proof of concept application, which was created by the devs basically just to see if the technology works for the intended purpose that they would want to achieve. But they didn't really have any design, so they wanted to create something basically from the ground up for the product launch. That's why they approached us.
I see. That sounds really complex with the electrodes and the garments, and I guess they were trying to try something new for themselves as well, so they may be a little lost. So how did you kickstart the project?
Yeah, so it was very early in development this product. They didn't have that clear of an idea. They had great ideas, but they haven't created an app before. They didn't have experience with that. Things changed a lot. And how the product started is they immediately wanted to design something, but they were not really sure like how to start, like what should they start with. What we proposed is to start with a discovery phase, which means that I started alone before designers joined, and my role was to clarify a bit the scope, like understand like what are their needs exactly, like who are they designing the product, what problem should it solve, and basically to, based on the knowledge gathered, to have a clearer picture, okay, so how much time should this take to develop something from the ground up, how many designers would be needed, how would the collaboration look like, things like that.
I see. And so I assume there were many parties involved as well within this collaboration, like data scientists, marketers, just because of the data that was being used also within the app with the sensors and all. How did the collaboration look like? That's what I'm interested in. And who were you in touch with the most as a researcher?
Yeah, sure. It actually changed throughout the project. At the very beginning, as the discovery phase that we did, I had mainly collaborated with the main stakeholders, which means like the CEO, the chief product officer, and the product owner. So the three basically main people at the company. So we ran workshops together. I had one-on-one sessions, stakeholders interviews with them to understand better the picture. And later, and also like the main developer as well, the CTO. And later throughout the product, we had collaboration with illustrators, developers, data scientists, marketers. It's really depended on the part on the projects we were focusing on. For example, when we did like a beta testing with a beta group that I worked very closely with marketing, when we were focusing on the street monitoring feature, then we had to collaborate more with the data scientists. And when we were designing the application and we had in mind to have illustrations, of course, the designers mainly interacted with an external illustrator. We also had audio designers, things like that. So it was a lot of different people working together to create Oxa.
Wow, that sounds exciting, but also a little challenging. So I was wondering if you found it challenging to work with different groups of people, like the data scientists, the marketers, or how did it look like for you?
I wouldn't say it was challenging because we all had a shared goal to create something very special, and everybody was very good at their own field. And we wanted to achieve success. So everybody was on board. I would say the main challenge at sometimes was that when there was like a bigger project which needed like information, like communication with a lot of different parties. For example, before the product launch, I did like a diary study, and there was a lot of different insights coming up in like 4 weeks on diary study, and I had to communicate with designers, developers, marketing, customer success, QA, a lot of different people at the same time, which was a bit hectic, but yeah, that was just because of that specific project. That was, everybody was lovely to collaborate with.
That sounds good. Yeah, if you have a shared goal, I guess it becomes easier, but if you have time constraints and you have to communicate with a lot of people, that is a bit challenging. But you mentioned the diary study, a method that not a lot of researchers get to try, and personally I haven't. So I would like to hear more about the diary study and then any other methods you see worth mentioning.
All right. Okay, so it was a long collaboration. I worked on this project for a year, and so there's been a lot of things that had to be done. At the beginning I did interviews with the target audience to understand like how people actually do breathwork, like people who already do breathwork, like what are their needs and challenges. Then there was competitor analysis because we wanted to include like sleep monitoring feature as well. So I had interviews with people doing sleep monitoring already. I did competitor analysis as well, desk research, seeing like what is available on the market, like what are the most requested features, how they work. Then we did legacy testing as well on the proof of concept application to see like the initial ideas, how it works. Then there was moderated testing on the prototype, remote also in-person testing and the prototype. We also tested a bit of content, like how the audio guide works, how the different illustrations work, how clear are they. And there was beta test group, and there was also like a diary study which I did before the product launch. It always comes down to like, of course, like what is the problem, but as to be solved. And like diary study is not really something that we do frequently. Not in the studio. We have done multiple ones, but that's not like every project at all. It has to be like a right problem. Choose that method. In this case, what arose is that we did extensive testing on the iterations of the prototype. So we had really good ideas on the initial onboarding, like how people do exercises, like how is the navigation inside the application. But we didn't really have insights on long-term usage. There was a lot of different features available in the application. There was like short or like long-term health monitoring, which basically you can measure different life situations, like how is your heart rate changing, how is your calmness, how is your HRV, sleep monitoring, different kinds of breathing exercises, like a different journey part, which actually teaches you about different breathing concepts so you can dive more into. And we didn't really know, okay, we offer a lot of different things, but we're not really sure like what different kind of people are interested in actually, like what are the main selling points, let's say, of the feature. Like, is there a difference between different target groups, like how they use the app, like what are the most interesting things. stakeholders really wanted to understand long-term things, like what motivates people to use more the application in the long term. So for this reason, we decided to do a diary study with different groups of people and the different personas that we had. We had people who are stressed or anxious. We had people who are generally just would like to live a healthier life. They don't really have stress or anxiety issues, but they're looking for everything that they can to improve their health, and they want to get into breathwork. And we also had people who are a bit more exercise focused, like performance focused, the overachievers who like to have as many data as possible, who would like to improve themselves. And we had these three groups of people, and we asked them to use the product for 4 weeks. And they had the task of log every time that they use the product. They had weekly tasks to finish, weekly questions that they would have to answer. And they also had an interview at the end. And so yeah, it was very useful because we understood what parts of the application is clear, which is not. There was a bigger difference between the different groups, what features are they mainly interested in and things like that. So that was extremely valuable for us, starting from the initial process of opening the package until throughout the first time using the product, onboarding, things like that, the first thing that they do, and then approaching the end, what are the things that they go back to, what are they interested in. So yeah, that was a very good possibility that we could do that.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting, and I wish I could try that in one of my upcoming projects. You just really need the right problem for that, and in this case it seemed that diary study really suited the process. They're using a garment and sensor, and it's not that they only use it for a little bit, it's more continual, and their experiences on a continual basis matters. Connected to that, what do you think was the most challenging part of all the methods that you've tried? Was it the diary study? What was the most challenging for you?
The most challenging one, I would say, definitely the diary study, because of how complex it is, and basically I had to do it on my own. Diary study is a complex method with planning, but it's also very complex during execution and with the synthesis part. So you everything can go wrong. So you have to manage multiple people throughout weeks. I had to be mindful of the shipping process, people not receiving the product at the same time. So there was a bit of a overlay or delay for some people. Also documenting everything, keeping in contact with everybody. There was some, of course, things can go wrong. So some people got the wrong size, for example, then we had to schedule that into keeping track, who's at what point of the journey when they should get their task, writing follow-up emails or messages if there is a delay. So yeah, it was challenging, different time zones as well. So it was complicated, but it was very worth it, because the depth of insights that can be gathered from a diary study was very valuable for this stage of the product. So yeah, I would definitely say it was the right method for this problem, but it was a lot of work. Looking back at it, I would probably ask for more resources from the outside to help me with managing this, but yeah, it was a challenge.
I can understand that, and I probably should have asked this before, but I guess you were the only researcher and they didn't have any in-house researchers, right?
Yeah, that was the case. So they didn't have anybody from UX internally, so they had one researcher, me, working on the project, and there was also 3 designers from the studio as well working on the project. So UX team was completely from the outside for them.
Okay, and what I'm interested in now is, what was the clients or the Nanoleq's UX maturity, would you say? Did you also have the chance to educate them on the value of research? I guess they already had some idea about design, but research is sometimes overlooked. And I was curious if that was also something you could practice.
Yes, so they didn't really have experience with the UX process before, but they knew that user experience is very important for the product to succeed. So they were very on board with the idea of UX, but they did not have experience with working with UX researchers or designers before. They definitely wanted to start with design as soon as possible, and that we had to push to start with research, to take a bit slowly at the beginning to understand the problem space before we start doing things, because you can only do the right thing if we understand the problem. So we definitely had to push it at the beginning, but I think we had it easy because they immediately saw the value of research. So I was actually very lucky because I did not really have to push for research with the client, because they were very excited and interested in research. They were always interested in the findings, and I actually had a good collaboration with the product owner. We always planned for the future, what kind of research initiatives were the most important. And so I would definitely say that research-wise, they definitely valued research. So it was a lucky collaboration from my part in that regard. And they were very interested and open to UX.
That's great. A match made in heaven. Really. I mean, even if UX, their maturity level is not so high, if they're interested in what you have to say, your findings, you're already very motivated. And that's really reassuring to hear.
Not only research, but they trusted our expertise, which is, I think, is very important. So they trusted our designers, their hunches, their insights, their expertise on why and how things should look like, how should they work, their process. They were very open to the initial branding and look and feel workshops. And it was a good collaboration in that sense. They were very open for working with us.
That's great. And that explains a lot, because I know that you've also received the Red Dot Design Award, and that would have probably not been the case if the collaboration wasn't as smooth, or they didn't value design, research, UX overall. But besides that, what do you think have contributed to receiving this design award, the really prestigious design award?
Yeah, that's the thing that happened. So we're very honored to have won that award, but I think we collaborated for that, but helped with the product winning it. I want to highlight that it was not only the application, of course, but the whole product. So that, as you mentioned, the company Nanoleq is very focused on design. They understand the value of it, and they value creating a great product. And it was not only for the application that we created, but also the garment itself. So it was also the work of the textile engineers. It's also the hardware engineers, because there's a sensor connected to the shirt, and that was also beautifully designed. So I think all three key parts of the product, the app, the sensor, and the garment together, created something holistically very appealing, and so that's what I think what's behind that. The stakeholders definitely valued design and throughout all parts of the product.
Okay, great. And thank you for the part that you played in it, and congrats for it, obviously. And I think my last question will be, what is your overall learning from this collaboration you've had with Nanoleq? I know it's always difficult to narrow it down to a few words, but if you can, we would like to hear that.
That's a very good question. So what I think is, of course, it was a very big project and a very complex thing, and I personally didn't work on a product which was very technical, and what I mean with technical is we worked with medical data and things like that, and we had to work very closely with as mentioned technical people, developers, at some points understanding the data behind it and things like that. And it can be very scary, especially if you have a product launch date ahead of you, you have to finish it. But it's very easy to get stressed about the whole thing. But I think what really helped us is not stressing about the end date, but always focusing on the next most important thing. Always focus on the next step needed to achieve the goal. So not stressing about future parts. So you have to nail down the foundations to be able to move forward with the next steps, and that was true with design and was also true with research. So to focus on the next most important thing, that was definitely it for my part.
Yeah, no, that's a great learning, and I think not only special to Nanoleq, but I guess in many cases
Exactly.
this is what you get to know to deal with stress, to know how to collaborate with others, with other stakeholders, parties involved. So you summed it up pretty well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
But yes, I guess I think these were all my questions for today, and thank you for unpacking your challenges, your learnings, and achievements with us. And until next time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for listening to us on Design Aloud. We hope today's episode sparked your curiosity and provided valuable insights. If you enjoyed what you heard, don't forget to subscribe or follow us on your preferred podcast platform so you never miss an episode. We also love hearing from our listeners. If you have any questions, topic suggestions, or just want to share your thoughts, feel free to connect with us on social media. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn with the handle UX Studio Team, or drop us an email at podcast@uxstudioteam.com. If you know someone who could benefit from the discussions we have here, consider sharing the podcast with them. It helps us grow and reach more people. Until next time, keep exploring, learning, and making a positive impact. This is your host, Aisha, signing off from Design Aloud.